Good afternoon. I'm PCT Internet Editor Brad Harbison, and thanks for joining us for today's webinar, The Keys to Effective Mosquito Control, sponsored by Zoecon Professional Products. And our presenter today is Mel Whitson, and Mel is the Senior Field Technical Service Manager for Zoecon, where he's responsible for product research, including field studies and working with the product development team at Zoecon. And Mel was recently promoted to the role following 12 years as a member of the company's sales team. And Mel earned a bachelor's degree in entomology and nematology from the University of Florida. He is currently an active member of various pest and mosquito control associations. During the next hour, Mel will review mosquitoes and their control, and he'll also provide insights into how PCOs can succeed with this increasingly popular service offering. And one note to pass along before we get started, we encourage everyone to ask questions throughout the webinar, and you can do so by typing them into the question box in the right-hand side of your screen. We'll hold all questions until the end, however, so that Mel will have enough time to finish. And at this time, I'll turn things over to Mel. Mel?
Hey, Brad. Thank you. We're gonna chat about mosquitoes. We're gonna talk about biology. A lot of the habitats are the same across the country, but all the control strategies and the surveillance and everything are pretty much the same. Let's see. Mosquitoes, you're looking at a mosquito going from egg to adult in about a week, depending on temperature. It could be shorter or longer. Eggs hatch in 24, 48 hours, and they'll spend a day or two in each instar and then emerge to the adult stage. The larval stages and the pupal stages are aquatic, and they're active. Both the larvae and the pupae can see, and they can still, react to shadows or things they see in the environment to keep from getting eaten. But they emerge onto the surface of the water, and the adults can migrate distances. So, usually the number one question you always get is midges and mosquitoes. They look pretty close, and you'll see lots of midges in habitats similar to mosquitoes. The big difference, you look at midges, they sit with their bodies on the surface, kind of flat, and their first pair of legs are long, a lot of times longer than the abdominal segments of the body. The name midges, they're chironomids, which means feet. Mosquitoes all have proboscises. They use them for feeding on plants and for taking blood, and they have an arched posture on the surface, and their third pair of legs, the rear pair of legs, are held up off the body and off the surface. So to do mosquito control, anyone can do it. You're looking at monitoring populations, adulticiding, ultra low volume. A lot of times this is what you see your city and county and district programs using if you have local mosquito control. Barrier treatments, it's pretty much applying a pesticide to areas where they're more likely to rest. Larviciding, this is the big component of municipal and public land mosquito control. It's treating water with a larvicide that keeps the mosquitoes from emerging. Either kills them in the water. Source reduction would be modifying your habitats, and that would be anything from filling low spots on property to ditches to helping areas drain, and habitat modification. So adulticiding, it's space applications made to kill adult mosquitoes, and this is what you see your county government's providing you most of the time. Ultra low volume, you're looking at ounces per acre of active ingredient, and pretty targeted. I put in a couple nice pictures here. One is a thermal fogger. All thermal foggers work on the pulse jet engine technology, and really the way they work is they get formulation onto a hot exhaust manifold, and it flashes off instantly and creates this smoke-like fog. And then you have your cold foggers that rely on an air blast and an air current and a fine nozzle to produce a very small spray, typically in the 20 micron range. The ultra thermal fog produces a much finer spray and a lot more droplets and produces a nice volume. The cold foggers, the ultra-low volume air blast ones, usually you don't even notice. You have to look real hard to see it going. You can usually get at least a 300-foot swath in neighborhoods around homes. Open fields and areas, you can get it to drift pretty far, but usually in urban areas, you can't count on more than 300 feet on a good day. So, there are all kinds of units that go from big to small. This is an 18-horse unit. They go down as small as being able to fit on the back of an ATV or in the back of a golf cart. But with ULV, this is a picture of me right here. It's a rare picture of me actually working. Calibration is important, and monitoring that droplet size usually once a season, checking your flow rates and seeing what kind of droplets you're getting ensures you're getting a good kill. We found with mosquitoes between 20 to 30 micron drops when you're trying to directly apply it to them is what it takes to get it to stick to them. Quick population reduction, and really the bottom line with adult deciding like this, using thermal or cold fogging technology, you're killing mosquitoes that are in the immediate vicinity, ones that are active, they're on the wing. Great for treating large areas, but you have to have good timing. Night or early morning for most of your species, and adult deciding we usually reserve for job basis, quick reduction in a large area if you've had an outbreak, if you've had some kind of weather event and mosquitoes have gotten out of control. It's a good tool to have. We have several products, and a lot of people know Zoecon. You know us for the pest control products, but we've been, we're originally a vector control company. We have several adulticides, some traditional. This is a 4% permethrin, 4% PBO. It has crop tolerance on the label. You could apply it in areas where there are food crops being used, and it's a nice oil-based formulation. Oil-based versus water-based. Most of pest control, as we know it in the pest control world, is all water-based. With a oil-based formulation outside, you're going to get droplets that are impervious to humidity, moisture, and that will drift a lot farther without evaporation, which is what a water-based formulation would do. So, barrier treatments. And this is really the bright spot for PCOs doing mosquito control. You can do it on your schedule, and you're applying a residual pesticide to resting areas. So, how do they work? Mosquitoes will migrate out of breeding sites dusk or overnight, looking for nectar and blood. And come daytime, they need to find a place to rest until the next evening. If a mosquito is caught out in an area that isn't very hospitable to it, if it's not moist or shady enough, the mosquitoes will die. So really we're looking for moist, shady areas and any area where a mosquito would rest. Mosquitoes are very susceptible to desiccation. And the good news is, with their body size, they're very susceptible to residual treatments on plants and shrubs. So, nectar. Without nectar, mosquitoes can't fly. They need it for flight fuel and for getting around. And where you have mosquitoes, you're going to have foraging on flowers and plants. The same proboscis they use to bite. They use the same proboscis to feed on flowers, and they will actually, on herbaceous ornamentals, they will feed on them just like aphids and whiteflies and other plant-feeding insects. They will actually tap into the side of the plant and get a meal that way too. So they can fly very far. Some of the mosquitoes here you can be trapped as far as 60 miles from their breeding sites. So flowering plants, they need them. They need moist, shady areas for harborage, and barrier treatments can break that up on any property you have. The thing with county and municipal mosquito control, they don't have the time or the people to do a lot of barrier treatments around homes, the homes that you service. Mosquito control districts, they will usually do, maybe a ball field here and there, but they are way understaffed and don't have the time or the resources to do any of these. So very effective. You can keep mosquitoes from resting in treated areas. And we'll talk about barrier treatments real quick here. There are conventional options and there are organic, natural options. Lambda 9.7 CS is a great, it's a great one. It's a dual microcap, low use rate. It's approved for a lot of uses, so you can not only use it for your barrier, but you can use it for other things too. The double caps give you a nice thin wall and a thick wall inside and out when you put the residual down. So they give you a greater residual, and this is probably the best residual product we have right now. Low odor, and it's a Lambda, but with the formulation process, we have a very low odor and very low irritation with this one. Maverick perimeter, honeybees have become a very hot topic. Maverick contains taufovalinate, which is a product that we know very well, and we know it does not kill honeybees once it is dried. It's commonly used inside hives for control of varroa mites. We have another product. This is with the same active. It's Apistan anti-varroa mite strips, and you can see it's 10% on strips, and you put them straight in the hive, and it kills the mites and not the honeybees. So it's a neat product. It's commonly used. It's pretty gentle on plants. And if you have customers that are concerned about bees, if you're concerned about bees, this is a go-to choice, especially if you have lots of flowering plants and areas like that where they're going to come for nectar and flight fuel. They come to the same place as the bees come to. So it's a great choice, and it's pretty unique in the market. And it says on the label, everything I'm telling you right now, it says on the label too. So organic and some natural options for barrier control. IC3, it's a good one. Geraniol 600, rosemary and peppermint. It's a very effective mosquito repellent, and it's a good one for knocking them down and keeping them off the property for a while. Very commonly used and been used with a lot of success. Octopamine blocker technology, there's no water setback. If you have areas around water that you want to treat, areas either on docks, you can treat docks and areas, any area close to water without a setback. So where you're limited with lots of other options, the IC3 can meet a lot of needs. No restrictions for pyrethroids and no bee restrictions. Good product. Let's see. It's compliant with the National Organics Program. It's certified 25B exempt, and it has a broad label too. Its partner is the Essentria All-Purpose with rosemary oil and peppermint. Another option, this one has a little less odor. It doesn't have the geraniol in it. It does have a little alcohol in the formulation that help it penetrate and get on the insect and get some knockdown. So IC3 and All-Purpose, both good choices, and two different products with two good sets of attributes. 25B exempt, low odor, Without the geraniol, you're going to get a lower odor. Safe for use on plants, food processing, and all kinds of areas on the label there. So, backpack blowers. In the past couple years, I've seen a nice change and some big improvements in a lot of the backpack blowers. I recommend these for doing barrier treatments on all properties. I don't care if it's a small home or a large home or a small ranch. The blower gets you penetration deep into the plant and deep into these flowering shrubs and stands. This is where your mosquitoes are going to be resting and hiding and taking their blood meals and overnighting, waiting for the next day to come out and attack the swing set in the background. So it's kind of neat. A lot of people underestimate the impact you can have treating an area like this that is dense with something like a backpack blower. When you spend a lot of time around it, you will see a big difference in the amount of mosquitoes on your property. Shrubbery near structures, and also shaded areas up underneath, areas up under decks. You can't overlook them. It's dark, it stays moist, and it's a great area for them to hang out during the day. You do a barrier treatment, and you can knock out this entire resting area habitat for them. The other thing, too, I wanted to mention, too, is you can see these shrubs here. A big part of doing barrier treatments and also habitat modification is cleaning out the landscape. You can recommend it where your customers do it. Sometimes, maybe. But removing leaf litter and organic matter and heavy stuff from inside these plantings helps quite a bit. If you have plants that look like this, where you can see the bottom where it meets the ground, this plant right here is going to be very attractive for a resting area for a mosquito. And a lot of times you can go through and trim the lower branches on a lot of shrubs and eliminate a lot of habitats. Just by doing that and redirecting sprinkler heads, you can change the habitat for them. Larviciding. We've been making larvicides since 1975. Usually folks don't have a lot of experience with larviciding on the PCO side, and it raises a lot of eyebrows. You're applying a pesticide into water to control mosquitoes. There are different kinds of pesticides for doing this, but some people can be alarmed just by doing anything that involves water. So we'll talk about it. Mosquitoes start as eggs, and different species and genuses lay their eggs in different areas. These are Anopheles eggs, and you can see they have little floats on the sides, and the mosquito needs water, standing water, and the female will land on the water and lay these eggs singly onto the surface of the water. Your Aedes species, a lot of your marsh mosquitoes and your artificial container breeders lay their eggs in areas that are going to be wet. It could be either moist soil or it can be a container that's dried down. These mosquitoes know that there has been water there before, and there will be water again. What is neat with this genus of mosquitoes is if an area is completely flooded, the females can't lay eggs. They have to be able to land on a surface and lay eggs onto either moist soil or glue them inside a container. If a container is actually totally full, it's kind of neat because it denies that container to these species of mosquitoes. So if you have a marsh and it's dry and in the spring it floods, you can treat it once, and then if it stays flooded, you won't get this genus of mosquitoes in there again. So nothing beats growing mosquitoes around your home, or a lot of our customers enjoy farming them. containers and pools around the homes harbor to the Aedes aegypti and Aedes albopictus, two very serious disease-transmitting mosquitoes. And they are domestic. They need artificial containers and a combination of that and people to survive. So you can see here our young assistant is pointing at this little black line here along the water. And if I can zoom that in, you can take a look here. These are all eggs. And these were laid probably when the water level was about right here. And they're laid here in anticipation of this container filling up. So one good storm, if the container fills up and it covers these eggs over the water line, then the eggs will hatch in 24, 48 hours and you get mosquitoes. How long are these eggs viable on these containers? They can go 2-3 years pretty easy. So this mosquito has been transported all over the world and is a regular that gets transported all around the Caribbean. The mosquito moves on belongings, people, and items being shipped all around the Caribbean and into the U.S. Culex mosquitoes. This genus is very important as far as disease transmission goes. They are very long-lived, and they are egg dumpers. They lay all their eggs at once in one location, and as you notice here, they only lay their eggs when the conditions are right for them laying them. If there isn't enough standing water, they hold on to their eggs until there's a decent rain event, and they'll lay them. Usually all the ones in the neighborhood will lay all their eggs at once. So the bad thing is when they're holding their eggs and the conditions aren't right, they continue taking blood meals, feeding on birds, and when conditions are poor and there's only small bodies of water, the mosquitoes and the birds become concentrated in natural areas. And then when you get a good rain, they tend to explode and dump all their eggs in unison in habitat. So the egg wraps are laid, and that's the neat thing with these is these mosquitoes, they lay these eggs so neatly. It's always impressive. They use their rear end. They don't look, they don't cheat, but they just reach back and keep laying them and gluing them onto the raft. Within a couple hours, they become dark like this, and the mosquitoes hatch right through the bottom here and go right into the water. So the life of the mosquito. Most of them, they all have siphon tubes. Some of them have really small tubes. Some of them have really long ones. They usually hang from the surface of the water, and the respiratory siphon breaks the surface, and that's how they breathe. There used to be a whole line of surface agents, suffocants, oils, and films that you could spray on top of the surface of water, and it would, in effect, drown them. They wouldn't be able to break the surface, or water and oil would go down into their siphons. And they hang mosquito feeding. It's mostly organic matter. Some of these larvae are actually predatory on other mosquitoes. They will eat other mosquito larvae. But, the primary function of the mosquito and the primary benefit of them is they are probably the first step of water filtration everywhere. They can clean up, I've seen them clean up pans and trays. They will make the water crystal clear. But that's what they do. They are the first stage of water filtration for the world, and certainly down here in Florida where I live. They go through 4 instars, usually 1 a day when temperatures are right. And they emerge from the egg. They're pretty well stocked. They do most of their feeding and development in the 2nd and 3rd instar, and usually the 1st and the 4th instars aren't very heavy feeders. A lot of toxicants that you use in water are pretty specific. They'll kill mostly 2nd and 3rd instars, but if you have very young ones or very old ones, they're not going to get a good dose and get some mortality. So as they grow, they just get bigger, and then when they're ready, they become pupae. This one's about to emerge, but pupae are usually in a C shape, and they have eyes. They can sense, they can see shadows, and certainly if you walk up to an area that has a lot of larvae in it and they're pupae, they will dive down to the bottom and hide with the rest of them. So they emerge onto water, onto the surface of the water, and it's a very delicate process. They use the body fluids in their abdomen to kind of squirt themselves out onto the surface, and within a couple hours, they've pumped enough fluid into their wings, and their exoskeletons have hardened enough, they're ready to take flight. So, breeding sites. Breeding sites are important. You know, a lot of times, depending on the property, your opportunities to find larvae, I mean, they're always there. They can breed in any area you can imagine them breeding in. So you can do all the barrier treatment and adulticiding you want to do, but if you don't do a good larval inspection, they're going to emerge as fast as you can kill them, and it'll seem like your problems aren't going away very quickly. So we do have some brochures available. If you get in touch with me or one of your Zoecon reps, you can get a little inspection form with a checklist. Pretty much anything you can have in your yard: open boats, gutters, leaking equipment or water around the home, everything from AC drips, plant cuttings. And if it's a foreclosure, or if your customer is lazy, you know, your neglected swimming pools, if they turn green, you can have some nice mosquitoes in there. Ornamental ponds, rain barrels, and any type of tool or tire that sits more than a few days can collect enough water to breed mosquitoes between monthly control visits. Bird baths too, but we'll take a look here real quick. Woodland pools. You know, it's with mosquitoes, I'll tell you, it's disturbed habitats in areas that dry down and don't hold water very often is where you're going to see them most of the time. A spot like this, woodland pool, the ground stays moist even when it's dry, just waiting for another rain. It's a definite treatment site. You can have a site like this on your customer's property, and you're there doing your inspection, and there's no standing water there. 2 days later, they get a couple inches of rain, and you can have thousands of mosquitoes coming off, and then by the time you come back on your next monthly visit, it looks dry again. So you can treat these areas on your schedule with a residual larvicide, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Here you can see these are all egg rafts on top of the water, and about 150 eggs per raft. And this is just a small section of surface on a little woodland pool there. So you can see, you know, that little area will flood and release, you know, tens of thousands of mosquitoes out of that little pool. Water-holding plants and ornamentals. This is a bromeliad, one of my favorite plants in the world. There are whole bromeliad growing societies and people who tour each other's homes with bromeliads. Plants hold water, and plants that hold water will breed mosquitoes. It's not if, they do. The axils of the plants will collect water, especially if they're irrigated. They'll have water year-round, so definitely need to be on a treatment list. Pitcher plants and pretty much anything. I put this on here just to demonstrate the turkey baster is a great tool for digging mosquitoes out of leaf axils and everything else. If you have one of these and a white cup, if you're doing any type of commercial property around any type of home, customers are always super impressed. If they come out on the inspection with you, you can grab one of these and suck the mosquitoes out and put them in a white cup and show your customers the larvae and show them what you can do for them. So temporarily disturbed areas are where you're going to find a lot of your mosquitoes. Timer's getting ahead of me. But you can see here there's all instars, all larval stages hanging in here and feeding. And this is pretty typical right here, overlooked, treated by a lot of county programs, but not everybody has the money to treat areas like this. This is primarily the water detention area. We can talk about water for hours. A lot of times in cities and towns that aren't on a wastewater grid or don't have retention ponds, they have detention areas where the entire block is graded so that the water will collect in one section, and theoretically it's supposed to evaporate. A lot of times it does, but a lot of times you get a little bit of rain in areas like this, and you can see this is a city of Tampa inspector doing his regular dips, and that's a dipping cup right there. If you get in touch with one of your Zoecon reps and have them come by and see you, you can probably talk them into giving you a couple of these dippers. They're very handy. It's a white cup on a stick. It's not very fancy, but it's the primary tool for inspecting for larvae. You pop it in the water, you scoop the larvae out, and you can get a good count as to how many per dip you get. And a lot of places will have the treatment threshold. You know, how many per dip you get out determines on whether you treat it or not. This area here is pretty neat because this could cause enough problems for this entire block. And you're looking at that, and this is maybe 10 ounces with probably 300, 350 larvae in that cup. So pretty neat. Urban areas, another overlooked spot is the catch basin. When West Nile virus hit the United States and came, catch basins and the mosquitoes that breed in catch basins were big vectors of West Nile virus, and still are. You look at these, and they funnel water away. They catch water, and it doesn't matter if it's raining or not, and these catch basins remain full with water in them. Single wing, double wing, and then also catch basins in the landscape, drainage areas. They will hold water, and really the best way to inspect all of these is to take a look in them. With catch basins like this, it doesn't take a whole lot to treat them. You can treat them with the simple briquette, or you can even check to see if there's water in them. You don't have to pull the lid up, but any type of small pebble you can find, you can just roll it in there and hear it splash down, and you can tell there's water in there. In the landscape, all of these have different forms and functions, but they all work the same way, draining water and managing the water on the property. And what you get inside of them is mean old mosquitoes. And I hope you have audio because I worked real hard on that. It makes a sound, mosquito flying around, sound is going around. But this is typical when you look inside of one of these. You will find pretty much organic matter, water, and crazy household items that got away from kids into the street. Tree holes. Tree holes are a big problem in lots of parts of the country. There is a tree hole mosquito, Aedes triceriatus, that is a tree hole specialist. So even if you can see them or not, if you look at them, you can identify them, you know where you have to go and look. Tires, tire piles can breed a variety of mosquitoes, but mostly your domestic Aedes aegypti and Aedes albopictus love tires. Albopictus came over in a load of tires from Japan, a barge load of used tires that came into the Gulf Coast. So now that mosquito is established throughout the Americas. Let's see, backyard projects that weren't finished properly. Water gardens provide all types of opportunity for mosquitoes, not only maintenance-wise, but if they leak or if there's a little non-target area where they dribble out onto. Worth checking out. Abandoned swimming pools that aren't in regular use. It goes without saying. You can treat these on schedule. A lot of mosquito control programs have entire almost routes dedicated to these abandoned pools after the housing collapse, especially down here. Each county has at least one guy that's paying attention to these and coming out and treating these every 3 or 4 months or a couple times a year. Plants for your avid gardeners and your not so avid gardeners. Plant trivets, pots, anything left in the landscape is usually overlooked. Let's see, their dog died a couple years ago. They just can't bring themselves to pick up the dog dish. Sites like this are pretty typical, and people get used to their surroundings and used to leaving stuff like this out. So, good part of the inspection. Bird baths. Bird baths are supposed to be, if you like the birds you're watering, you keep fresh water in there for them, and you're supposed to really hose these out once a week. And if everyone did that, we wouldn't have mosquitoes in bird baths. But bird baths are a big-time breeder. And what I recommend with bird baths is just treating them. I've tipped these before, and I have broken 1 or 2 before, and they're not worth touching. Either flush them out or treat them, because once you touch them and you break them, it turns into an antique bird bath. This is a good example here too. It's just a trash can that someone left out in the yard. This was out behind a school, and I counted 82 egg rafts in this thing, and you can see where the water level fluctuates in here from top to bottom. You can see there was a rain event, and it went down about 1 inch. But all these eggs are here, and Culex mosquitoes, they love heavily polluted water, and they usually breed pretty easily in something like this. So in this little can, I had 82 rafts times about 150 eggs, about 12,300 eggs, and with taking into account mortality, you're looking at about 10,000, 8, 9, 10,000 mosquitoes coming out of this little trash can in the backyard. Gutters. Gutter maintenance. Gutters, just because they are covered under roof, any low spots, if your gutters aren't graded properly, or if they're old or dirty, they will collect water and mosquitoes. Worth treating. Cisterns, some parts of the country, you'll have cisterns around homes, older homes, and these are always worth popping open and taking a look inside. You will find mosquitoes and people breeding mosquitoes close to where they live. Kitchen equipment and pretty much anything stainless steel that is left outside is going to collect water and breed mosquitoes. Tarps, whether they're used to cover firewood, boats, regular inspection, keeping them tight, and keeping them from collecting any water is going to go a long way towards eliminating problems around your homes and businesses. This is interesting to me. It was just a trash can lid that was sitting next to the trash can it was supposed to be on, but it had been sitting out there long enough that it had collected water and started to breed mosquitoes. So, let's see, getting closer in on a commercial account. This is an account that had a VIP check-in area, and they would bring in their top guests to the hotel and casino and have them sit right here as they unloaded their stuff and brought them their keys and their paperwork and sent them on their way. Problem was they were getting eaten eaten alive by mosquitoes. The company that was doing it, God bless them, they were running a ULV truck up and down the driveway and around the sides of the hotel. But really the problems were in these planters. And what happens with these plants, especially plants in commercial businesses, whether you're looking at fungus gnats or anything else, the plants are kept in an area where they don't get direct sunlight, and they're there temporarily. It's not a permanent planting. When the plant starts to look a little off, they pull the plant out, they take it back to the greenhouse, and they swap it out for another of the same plant to keep the look continuous. The problem is they never plant them, and they water them aggressively, and you get standing water and mosquitoes inside planters, plant trivets, and everything else. Usually I look for things like spider webs and larvae themselves. This one that was right by the door, we dumped these out, and you can see here there's a couple larvae just right there. But there were all stages in here. And usually there are spider webs associated with it. This one they'd packed with some landscaping materials and everything else, but there was still water at the bottom. You had to dig in this one pretty good. So, the other question I always get is around ponds and lakes. And ponds and lakes, if they are managed and the water is permanent, you're not going to have a whole lot of mosquito breeding. And what I mean by managed is the emergent vegetation around the edges. Proper retention pond isn't going to have cattails or things sticking out the edges, and it's going to have a uniform depth from the side going in. There's going to be plenty of fish in here because it's established, plenty of insects, and they will be able to mop up anything that tries to live in here. So this is a good pond. You look at this one, and there really is no need to treat. You look at a pond like this, and you start to run into trouble. When the water's edge is blurred and you have emergent vegetation and weeds and just thickness, you'll get mosquitoes that breed in here. And the bigger they get, when they get into late instars and pupae, they actually migrate farther into the vegetation. And, rule of thumb is get down to the water's edge, and if your shoes get water or crest in the water, you should treat these with the granular larvicide. Zoecon means life control in Greek, and back in 1975, our first formulation was a liquid methoprene larvicide. Same active ingredient that's in Precor 2000 that you use for fleas on the inside. Its original use was for controlling mosquito larvae. We have a bunch of different formulations from extended release briquettes. These go up to 150 days depending on the habitat. We have 3 sets of granules with different residual lengths depending on what you're targeting, and then some 30-day and other 150-day briquettes for treatment. So we'll run through these real quick, and no matter what you're doing, these come in handy. They come in handy. An insect growth regulator is a man-made reproduction of a normally occurring compound in the insect. And really, we came up with methoprene, hydroprene, and kindoprene, which are juvenile growth hormones. The other types of IGRs are chitin synthesis inhibitors. Some of your other things are diflubenzuron, things that are found in like termite stations. They're robust and they hang on for a long time. The advantage of ours is that they break down pretty rapidly in the environment. The insect juvenile hormone, as it was published in 1967, we came up with the methoprene, which is an analog of it and works just as good. So, as an insect grows, this is just a schematic of how they work. As it goes from egg to adult, the juvenile hormone levels have to drop down to 0. And your ecdysone levels spike every time they molt. This is what they chitin synthesis inhibitor would do would be here on the yellow line. But when you introduce Alticid into the water, all it takes is parts per billion to disrupt this juvenile hormone system in the mosquitoes, and what you get is incomplete pupation and death. 0.2 to 4 ppbs is this is the highest release you'll get from any of these formulations. So, pupae, larvae will develop normally up until they pupate, and the way you tell it's working is you see incomplete pupation and dead adults on the surface. You can see this one here partially emerged, and these two up here didn't make it out of the pupal stage. So that's typically what you'll see is dead pupae and dead partially emerged adults on the surface of the water. We've been approved for drinking water by the WHO, and we have all these areas on the label. Fish-bearing, animal drinking troughs is a big one. That's usually a big question I get to write on the label. Any type of fish-bearing water, any habitat is on there, whether it be marsh, salt marsh, fresh water, anything. Similar sites are on all the labels, so we'll run through these real quick. There's 100 up to 150-day Alticid XR briquette. This is them eroded in water. This is 4.5 weeks of erosion. This is what's left when you start out with a big briquette. This is what we collected in the troughs after the study was done. So they all erode and release methoprene into the environment. There's different sizes and formulations, and they all work off the same principle. You can treat dry ground or an area you know is going to be wet, and the Alticid is there. And as soon as it gets wet, doesn't matter if the water comes up or down, the briquettes will stay there and release Alticid when they're wet and stop releasing when they're dry. So, great tool. There are also some forms to consider. We have some sample forms with recommendations, things you observe around the home, a self-help form, and an inspection form. An inspection form, whenever you do any of these type jobs, note what you see and where you see it and what the customer can do to help you out. The big thing is the Mosquito Management Service Agreement. It's best to run off a separate agreement. You can talk to your own legal or get in touch with the MPMA. They have mosquito management service agreements that you can take a look at, borrow from, and study. It has all the typical disclaimers on there. You can always reduce mosquito populations, but you can never guarantee that someone will stand on their property and never see another mosquito. The customer has a role in taking precautions when they're outside, and the customer also has responsibilities and obligations to do their part in a mosquito management program. So, the service provider, you know, it also states on it liable for mosquito-borne illness or disease contracted on the property. But it's got a lot of nice little print in there and things that will help you on both sides. And it's a good starter if you're looking on developing a contract for your business. So, looking at something like an HOA, hopefully with what I've given you today, you can take a look at a property and take a look at the catch basins in the community or even a home, and take a look at doing ULV treatments. Between doing barriers, larviciding and inspecting, and ULV treatments, and I usually recommend these on a job basis, barbecues, catering, weddings, etc. And really, you know, a lot of folks look at an area like this. This is a community center, a clubhouse, a pool, some tennis courts, and it takes a good walk of the property, taking a look at how many feet of ditches you have, catch basins in the parking lot, catch receptacles, and then taking a look at doing barrier treatments, areas around the walks, doing barriers and the vegetation low around the sidewalks, around the tennis courts. This barrier area here, this is the playground, and then up against the building and around the front of the building where you have low-lying shrubs. larviciding in the ditches, doing your barrier treatment, and then giving the customer a price. If they want to have a big outdoor party out here, tell them, figure out how much time it would take you to do a ULV treatment, and give them a special price for doing events, weddings, parties. And other than that, you can give them some good control. Monitoring, showing up on site, seeing how many there are. That can be as easy as standing out next to a wooded area and seeing how many mosquitoes come out looking for you after a minute. It's called a landing rate count. Adulticiding, we talked about barrier treatments. You have lots of options in there. We have the Lambda, the Maverick, and the Naturals, the IC3 and the all-purpose. Larviciding with the Alphacid, it's really the only proven and reliable residual larvicide you can use out there. A little too early for that. Source reduction, habitat modification, and any questions?
Mel, thanks for the great presentation. A lot of great information in there, and I appreciate you sharing some of your experiences. We did get some questions come in, and we'll continue to field them while we go through the Q&A here. Mel, the first question I had was, if we mix IC3 with another residual product, will the IC3 break down those active ingredients?
No, the IC3 is pretty compatible. When you're looking at oils, if an active ingredient won't break down in a petroleum distillate, something like IC3 that's in a distillate, that's in oil itself, will break it down.
Next question was, do Lambda or Maverick harm butterflies? And if so, is there another option? This is a common question we get.
Yeah, butterflies, we talk about adults or larvae. With the droplets and the application rates you have with things like the ULV, the butterflies don't get a lethal dose. If you have larvae on the plants and you have a butterfly garden, you're better off choosing some type of habitat modification. Anything you spray with a liquid contact pesticide is going to be gone. You'll have a little bit of leeway doing a barrier with something like a solo backpack or a steel backpack, because they won't get the full dose, and you have a lot more leeway with ULV doing that in the morning or evening. But killing the adult butterflies, that's all a timing issue, and the plants you're treating and everything else. If you have something that's in full bloom that butterflies are visiting, I would skip that if the butterflies are active and in the area. If you can do it before they're active or after, and it gets a chance to dry before the butterflies come in, then you're going to have less impact if you do that.
Next question was, is it acceptable to provide a barrier treatment with mist blower as well as a ULV application with a ULV cold sprayer? Okay,
we're talking about doubling up.
Yeah, I believe that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. You follow the more restrictive label. You can do that. If you have some areas that you're really trying to knock them down farther away than you can reach, your backpack is only going to penetrate so far. There shouldn't be any problem with doing them both, because really the barriers, you want to stop anything from resting that's close to people. But sometimes you just can't get into areas, and I do recommend doing a ULV and a barrier to what you can reach on the inside.
Next question was sort of a two-parter, so I'll ask them to you one at a time. And can treatments using Lambda or Maverick be effective in small yards with few or no shrubs?
That's a tricky one too. If it's a small yard, you have to drop off your business card with the neighbors. If you don't have suitable resting sites for them, they're not going to survive there anyway. It's sometimes in high populations, though, you can have them hanging around entry vestibules, around where you open the door to come into your home, or around the garage door. It's always a good idea to put something out. But if you have a small yard and what you're doing isn't very effective, start calling on the neighbors, because usually it's the problems within 100 feet of where you're experiencing it.
And then the second part of the question was this: if the grass is sprayed, is the application useless once the lawn is mowed?
Okay. You're not going to find them unless the grass is real tall.
Mm-hmm.
I usually don't recommend doing grass, open grassy areas. Those usually aren't suitable for them to even overnight. But whenever you're doing any type of application to a lawn, you got to mow first.
Next question was, we've used IC3 in our backpack sprayer and B&G. How do you get rid of the smell that still remains in the equipment even after using it several times?
Even after using it several times. The best thing to do is a simple cleaning agent, water, distilled white vinegar, and give it a flush. Usually about a cup of distilled white vinegar per gallon. Let it sit, let it marinate, and give it a good triple rinse that way. A mild detergent will also work too. Something like an all-clear detergent you would use on clothes that doesn't have any perfumes or dyes. You just need something to get those oils out of there. Depending on what kind of bushings and seals you have, if you don't have Whitson seals on your equipment, it can give your equipment and your seals an odor.
Next question, well, where's the best place to review legislation and restrictions for mosquito programs based on state and county laws? Specifically, they're interested in Michigan and Ohio.
Okay, Michigan and Ohio, there is public health pest control up there. Start with the Department of Agriculture, and they will point you in the right direction. Some states they serve under the same oversight, but each state has its own specific sections for public health and doing pest control through the Department of Ag typically.
Okay. The next question is your thoughts on using Maverick with garlic concentrate.
Garlic concentrate. That's a great topic. There isn't anything in the literature that proves garlic concentrate is very good. Good for controlling or repelling mosquitoes. You can repel any kind of insect with an oil in an area, but if garlic oil really worked that great, there would be garlic oil being applied everywhere right now. Soldiers in Afghanistan would have garlic oil in their meals ready to eat, and they would take garlic pills, and we'd have lots of garlic everywhere. Garlic, it's not a recommended tool by me or by any public health entity.
Next question was, what tools are available or suggested for measuring and placing granular IGRs into roof gutters without climbing ladders?
Okay. There is a water-soluble pellets in a pouch that I have on a slide here. I didn't go into it, but this one has an area. It's one for every 135 square feet. So if you had 8 10-inch gutters, you could put one out about every 15 feet, and what will happen is this water-soluble pouch will dissolve and it'll leave granules in there. You don't have to have absolute even coverage, but you can put one of those about every 15 feet.
Question was, where can we obtain inspection forms?
Inspection forms. You can get with your Zoecon rep. Your Zoecon rep will have them. You can go to Zoecon.com, and any state you're in, you can find your rep on the website. We have sample forms and sample contracts available.
Okay. Question was, is there any anything registered for use in Canada?
For use in Canada, we do have Alticid briquettes in Canada. I'm afraid we don't have much else. We do have extended residual briquettes in Canada.
Okay. Let's see here. How far can one Alticid briquette spread? And let's say the question was, let's say a site is less dry and then floods. Does the briquette become diluted?
Okay. So we're talking, per the label, it's 1 per every 100 square feet. If you put one in a low spot and let's say the water becomes 200 square feet, you're not going to get the best control. Sites like that you usually have to treat in a grid-like pattern. If you know the water is going to rise and go down irregularly. I usually like to pretend that I'm walking in a parking lot, because usually, each parking space is about, 10 by 10, and putting one per every parking space as you're going through. And sometimes, areas flood irregularly, and it might take a couple inspections, but, it's 1 per 100 square feet, and if you anticipate having more than that, you put one in the middle and put some 15 feet out in a radius from the middle, and that covers all your edges if it were to float up, area were to flood up.
Okay. The question was, how is Alticid different from Mosquito dunk?
It's a different active. The Mosquito dunk is a Bacillus thuringiensis. It's pretty much a bacterial spore, a powder that's put on corn cob and compacted into a shape, and those can float around and float off-site. If you have an area that's flooded and you have one of those in there, though I've seen the wind blow them out too. Ours are pretty heavy. They go to the bottom, and methoprene is lighter than water, so it rises to the surface, and you get control throughout various floodings and dry downs. It's if you look at professional mosquito control and what they use, the dunks have a lot of flaws. If you're talking about treating some planters and a couple of small spots around the house, those are fine, but those aren't going to cut it in a ditch. Those aren't going to stay in a catch basin. So, you'll find that guys that do this as their regular job 7 days a week, they choose the Alticid briquettes. The dunks are, they do have their use and they do kill mosquitoes, but they're light, they float, and they won't kill all stages of the mosquito. They'll kill those seconds and thirds, as I pointed out earlier. Some of them will get by.
Okay. We did have a couple questions here that I'll answer this next one. A couple questions there about, where can people get a copy of the presentation if they were late coming to the webinar, or if they want to view something again. A couple things on that is we'll have this webinar archived up on our website within the next few days. So check back with PCT Online. We'll also be providing it to the Zoecon folks, so you can check with your rep and you can get the presentation from them as well. That's all we had as far as questions. A lot of great questions, so I want to thank everyone for participating with their questions. And again, I want to thank Mel for a terrific webinar. And before we end this, I want to turn it back over to Mel with a couple final words. Mel?
Oh, it's, a mosquito control. I try to present it in some broad strokes because you're going to have these exact same habitats no matter where you are. You could be in the desert. You can be in the mountains. It's a pest that's very easily managed and controlled over, the bigger an area you manage and control, the better control you can get over them. So, I'd tell all of you, if you're not doing it, get into it. You can make a big difference for your customers, and you can do a job that municipalities can't afford to do. And if you're in mosquito control, I would once again, I'd encourage you to learn more. A lot of states have educational sections with topics that are specific to their state. A lot of states have associations and have association meetings. So there's a lot of outreach and a lot of education going on out there. Get your licenses, tune in, talk to your local associations, and keep learning, keep improving. Every day I go out, I learn something new. So it's an exciting test, and it's an exciting opportunity for everybody.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks again, Mel, and I want to thank all of our listeners for taking some time out of your day to go through this webinar. And again, thanks to everybody for attending, and have a great day.